The silent departure. The grand hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched upward like a cathedral to the stars. Thousands of delegates from 312 member species filled the circular chamber, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. At the center podium stood Ambassador Marcus Webb, his grey suit looking plain among the elaborate robes and biological displays of the assembled representatives. The voting display illuminated the chamber in cold blue light. The numbers climbed steadily. 267 votes for Exile, 38 against 7 abstentions. Humanity's membership in the Galactic Assembly was hereby revoked. Webb watched the final count appear. His expression remained neutral, almost serene. Around him, various reactions rippled through the chamber. The Thraxi delegation clicked their mandibles in satisfaction. The Valorum representatives sat motionless, their luminescent skin dimming with what might have been regret. The Korath observers shifted their massive bulk, clearly expecting an outburst. High Chancellor Vaughn, a being whose species had governed the Assembly for 3 generations, raised one of his forearms. His voice carried through the translation matrix that hummed throughout the chamber. Ambassador Webb, the Assembly has spoken. Humanity is hereby expelled from all territories under Assembly jurisdiction. You have 45 standard days to remove all human presence. This includes colonies, research stations, trade posts, and military installations. Do you understand these terms? Webb stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured, carrying none of the anger that everyone expected. We understand completely, High Chancellor. We accept the Assembly's decision. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. This was not the human way. Humans were known for their passion, their tendency to argue every point, their refusal to accept decisions they found unjust. The delegates had prepared for protests, for legal challenges, perhaps even for threats. They had not prepared for acceptance. You do not wish to appeal? Vaughn asked, his tone uncertain for the first time in decades. No appeal, Webb said. The Assembly has made its choice. We respect democratic processes, even when they work against us. We will begin evacuation procedures immediately. He gathered the documents from his podium, gave a slight bow to the chamber, and walked toward the exit. His small delegation of human advisors followed. None of them looked back. In the observation galleries, journalists from a dozen species began transmitting the news. Humanity had been exiled. The dangerous, unpredictable humans who pushed boundaries and questioned traditions would finally be gone. Many broadcasts carried celebratory tones. Some carried notes of caution. A few carried something that resembled mourning. The evacuation began within hours. Across 87 star systems, the message reached every human facility, every colony, every outpost. The instructions were clear and came directly from the Human Coordination Council. Pack essential items only. Shut down operations cleanly. Say your farewells. Leave no mess behind. We depart with dignity. On Zentari Prime, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo stood in her medical research laboratory, looking at equipment she had spent 12 years developing. The genetic sequencer that could identify diseases in minutes instead of days. The surgical robots that could operate on 3 different species simultaneously. The diagnostic AI that had reduced mortality rates by 40% across the planet. Her assistant, a young Zentari named Kellis, stood beside her with his blue scales dulled by sadness. You could stay, Kellis said. You personally did nothing wrong. The medical board would grant you special status. Sarah shook her head while packing her personal items into a small case. If I stay, I become stateless. No protection, no rights, no home. Besides, my people need me now more than ever. What about the sequencer, the diagnostic system? We barely know how to maintain them. Sarah handed him a data chip. Everything you need is here. Maintenance protocols, troubleshooting guides, upgrade procedures. But Kellis, you need to actually read it, understand the systems, not just use them. Will you take the designs with you? The designs stay. We built them for Zentari Prime. They belong here now. She took one last look at her laboratory, then walked out. She did not see Kellis place the data chip on a shelf, intending to read it later. Later never came. Across the planet, similar scenes unfolded. Human teachers left. Classrooms mid-semester. leaving detailed lesson plans that assumed their alien colleagues understood the material as deeply as they did. Human engineers shut down power grids they had optimized, leaving manuals that were technically complete, but assumed knowledge that few possessed. Human artists closed galleries, human musicians stopped teaching, human writers ended their series unfinished. On Korath 4, the mining operations entered crisis mode. Chief Engineer Thomas Kane stood before the Korath Mining Authority Board, his weathered face showing the strain of 3 decades underground. "You cannot simply leave," Superintendent Grawl insisted, his rock-like features twisted with anger. "We have contracts, legal obligations." "Those contracts were voided when humanity's legal status was revoked," Kane replied. "We're not citizens anymore. The contracts are meaningless. Then we will force you to stay." "With what authority?" "We're being exiled." "You can't exile us and keep us simultaneously." Grawl's stone fingers cracked as he clenched them. "Fine, leave. But the safety systems you installed, the structural monitors, the ventilation networks, those stay. We paid for them." "Of course they stay. We built them into the mine structure. But Superintendent, please listen carefully." Kane leaned forward. "Those systems require constant calibration. The seismic monitors need adjustment every 72 hours. The ventilation AI needs manual oversight because it tends to overcorrect in Shaft 7. The structural supports in the deep sections need inspection every week, not every month like your old systems. We know how to run our own mines, human. Do you?" Kane asked quietly. "When was the last time you personally inspected a deep shaft?" Grawl said nothing. Kane left detailed instructions. He trained the Korath engineers for 3 intensive days, showing them everything he could in the limited time, but 3 days could not replace 30 years of experience. He saw it in their eyes, the way they nodded without truly understanding, the way they wrote down steps without grasping the underlying principles. On the orbital stations that circled 100 worlds, human traffic controllers shut down their coordination networks. The systems that routed thousands of ships daily through complex traffic patterns went dark. Backup systems existed, older algorithms that had been in place before humans arrived. They were functional but crude, like replacing a conductor with a metronome. Station Commander Lisa Park transmitted her final report to the Orbital Control Authority. "All human personnel have evacuated Station Zenith 7. We leave the facility in full operational order. The navigation AI has been reset to baseline parameters. The docking protocols are set to standard assembly configurations. The maintenance schedule is posted in the central database." The reply came from a Valorum supervisor. "Commander Park, the advanced routing algorithms, the predictive maintenance AI, the emergency response systems, these were human-designed. Who will maintain them? They're documented in the technical libraries. Any competent engineer can learn them. But will they function without human oversight?" Park paused before answering. "They'll function. Whether they'll function optimally depends on who operates them. We've done everything we can to make the transition smooth." What she did not say was that the algorithms were complex, built on intuitive decisions that came from years of watching patterns, of understanding how different species piloted their ships, of anticipating problems before they became critical. The documentation was thorough, but documentation could not capture instinct. The military bases emptied with precise efficiency. Human tactical advisors who had trained assembly defense forces for generations packed their equipment and departed. Admiral Janet Reeves, the human liaison to the Assembly Defense Command, met with her counterpart one final time. General Corvin, a Thraxi veteran of 4 wars, stood rigid in his office. "Your people taught us much about combined arms tactics, about flexible response strategies. This feels wrong." "It is what it is," Reeves said. "You have good officers, General. Trust them, trust yourselves. But the tactical simulations, the training programs, the strategic databases, all remain. We're not sabotaging anything. Every lesson, every simulation, every strategic analysis is in your systems. Use them well." Corvan's mandibles clicked nervously. "Theory is not practice. Your advisors had instincts we lack." "Then develop your own instincts. You're capable of it." After she left, Corvin reviewed the training databases. Thousands of tactical scenarios, detailed analysis, comprehensive strategies. Everything was there, except the one thing that mattered most: the human ability to see 3 moves ahead, to anticipate the opponent's psychology, to adapt instantly when plans fell apart. Those qualities could not be programmed into a database. The cultural impact became apparent within days. Human entertainment dominated the galactic networks. Music, stories, films, games all stopped production. Ongoing series ended with no resolution. Popular musicians announced final performances. The most watched shows in assembly space went dark. 6 months after the humans left, the Kresh attacked. They hit 3 border systems simultaneously, a coordinated assault that should have been manageable. It was not. General Corvin led the response personally, commanding a fleet of 200 vessels against an estimated Kresh force of 300. The numbers favored the assembly. Their ships were more advanced, better armed, more durable. But the battle went disastrously wrong. Corvin gave orders based on human-taught doctrine. His fleet commanders executed those orders poorly. Ships that should have maintained defensive formations broke apart. Support vessels that should have provided covering fire arrived too late. Communication broke down as different species interpreted orders differently. The Kresh swarm, fighting with perfect coordination, tore through the assembly fleet. They destroyed 47 ships before Corvin ordered a retreat. The assembly lost 6,000 personnel. The Kresh lost 18 ships. The defeat shocked the military command. Corvin filed his report with brutal honesty. We followed human tactical doctrine precisely. The failure was not in the doctrine, but in our execution. Human advisors had trained us to work as a unified force, but that unity depended on their coordination, their ability to adapt in real time, their tactical instincts. Without them, we are 312 species trying to fight as one and failing. Admiral Thress, the Assembly's supreme military commander, read the report with growing dread. Can we develop these capabilities ourselves? Eventually, Admiral, but it will take years. The humans spent generations refining their command structure. They had something they called mission-type tactics, giving subordinates objectives and trusting them to achieve those objectives creatively. We've been trained to follow specific orders. We don't adapt well when situations change. Then we must learn to adapt. We are learning, Admiral, but we're learning in combat, and the cost is catastrophic. 2 more battles followed over the next 3 months. The assembly won one narrowly and lost another badly. The Kresh swarm pushed deeper into assembly space, taking 4 systems. The casualty rates were staggering compared to the previous 2 decades of border conflicts. Research institutions across the galaxy reported similar problems. Projects that had been progressing steadily under human leadership stalled completely. The sophisticated experiments that human scientists had designed required expertise that their alien colleagues lacked. Dr. Venn, a Valorum physicist at the Central Research Institute, stared at the data from their failed faster-than-light experiment. The test had been designed by Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a human physicist who had left 6 months ago. The documentation was detailed, the procedures were clear, but something had gone wrong. We followed the protocol exactly, Venn told his research team. Every step, every calculation, every safety measure. His assistant, a young researcher named Kira, reviewed the recordings. Dr. Martinez used to make small adjustments during the test, real-time modifications based on instrument readings. Those adjustments aren't in the protocol, because they required judgment. She told me once that the protocol was a framework, not a recipe. She adapted based on what the instruments were telling her. Venn felt a familiar frustration. The humans had made science look easy, but they had brought intuition and creativity that others struggled to match. They saw connections between different fields. They asked questions from unexpected angles. They pushed boundaries. Now research progressed slowly, methodically, safely, but safely meant conservatively. The cutting edge of galactic science had dulled. The cultural impact was perhaps hardest to quantify, but impossible to ignore. Galactic entertainment had relied heavily on human content. Now that content was gone and the void was obvious. Shira, the young Valorum who had mourned her lost television show, tried watching programming from other species. It was competent but lacked something essential. Valorum dramas were too slow, too philosophical. Thraxi action shows were too simple, too focused on physical conflict. Korath comedies were incomprehensible to non-Korath. Human content had bridged species differences. Their stories explored universal emotions: love, loss, hope, fear, ambition, failure. They created characters who felt real, who made mistakes, who grew and changed. Their music moved people across species lines. Their art challenged assumptions. Now the galactic cultural landscape felt empty, like a garden where the most vibrant flowers had been removed. The assembly began receiving reports from every sector. Medical systems failing, mining accidents increasing, transportation delays worsening, military defeats mounting, research stalling, cultural products declining in quality. The pattern was unmistakable. 6 months after humanity's departure, the Galactic Assembly held an emergency session. The chamber was packed, but the atmosphere was different from the vote that had exiled humanity. Then there had been confidence and celebration. Now there was worry. High Chancellor Vaughn reviewed the compiled reports with 3 of his eyes, while the 4th watched the assembled delegates. The numbers were damning. Medical mortality rates up 19% across assembly space. Industrial accidents up 34%. Transportation efficiency down 41%. Military effectiveness down 57%. Research output down 29%. Economic growth down 16% and declining. The chamber was silent. These were not minor disruptions. These were civilization-threatening declines. We knew there would be an adjustment period, a Thraxi delegate said defensively. These problems are temporary, are they? Asked Representative Morvan. Every report indicates the same pattern. We didn't just lose human labor. We lost human expertise, human innovation, human problem-solving. We're not adjusting. We're declining. Then we learn, insisted the Thraxi. We develop our own expertise. How long will that take? Years? Decades? How many more die while we learn lessons the humans could have taught us? Chancellor Vaughn raised an arm for silence. The question before this assembly is clear. Did we make an error? Was the exile of humanity a mistake? For a long moment nobody spoke. Then Councillor Brannick, a Valorum elder who had voted for exile, stood slowly. Yes, he said quietly. We made a mistake. We feared human unpredictability, their rapid innovation, their tendency to question tradition. We told ourselves the galaxy would be safer, more stable without them. We were wrong. Other delegates began standing one by one, acknowledging the same truth. The humans had not been a threat. They had been the foundation supporting much of galactic civilization, and in exiling them, the Assembly had removed that foundation. Can we contact them? Someone asked. Apologize? Ask them to return. We've tried, Vaughn said. Our messages to known human colonies received no response. Scout ships report those colonies empty, abandoned. Humanity has vanished. Then we must find them, Brannick declared. We must admit our error and make amends. The vote was called. 294 civilizations voted to authorize a search mission. Only 3 voted against. The mission would be led by Captain Vex, a Thraxi explorer known for her tenacity. She was given the fastest scout ship in the fleet and a simple mandate: find humanity. As Vex prepared her ship for departure, she reviewed everything known about humanity's exodus. 12,000 ships had left assembly space, heading toward the outer rim. Beyond that, nothing. They had disappeared into unexplored space, leaving no trail, no clues, no forwarding coordinates. She stood on the bridge of her ship, looking at the star charts. The galaxy was vast beyond comprehension. Humanity could be anywhere. Navigation, plot a course for the outer rim sectors where humans were last detected. Acknowledged, Captain. Beginning search pattern Alpha. The ship jumped into hyperspace. Behind it, the Galactic Assembly waited anxiously. Ahead lay empty space, and the growing question that haunted every species. Where had humanity gone, and would they ever come back? The search captain Vex had been searching for 4 months when her crew began losing hope. They had jumped through 87 star systems, scanned hundreds of planets, followed every faint signal that might indicate human presence. They found nothing except empty space and alien ruins from species long extinct. Her crew, a mixed team of 5 species, gathered in the small briefing room of the scout ship Pathfinder. Lieutenant Corrin, a young Korath with dark stone-like features, spoke what others were thinking. Captain, we should return. The humans could be anywhere in the galaxy. We're searching blind. Vex examined the star charts projected above the table. Her mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The humans left assembly space heading roughly in this direction. They had 12,000 ships, billions of people. They couldn't have gone too far in 6 months. They needed to find habitable systems quickly. But we found nothing, said Ensign Thela, a Valorum whose skin flickered with frustration. No colonies, no signals, no debris, nothing. Vex zoomed the star chart outward, showing unexplored regions beyond their current position. They're out there. They have to be. A civilization doesn't simply vanish. Dr. Shen, the ship's Valorum scientist, studied the charts more carefully. Captain, what if we're searching incorrectly? We're looking for large energy signatures, major colonies, obvious signs of civilization. But the humans left because they wanted to be free of assembly oversight. Would they build obvious colonies that could be easily found? What are you suggesting? That we look for subtle signs, patterns in stellar activity, unusual mineral extraction signatures. A young Valorum named Shira sat in her apartment on the homeworld, staring at her screen. Her favorite human drama had just released a message. Due to Exile, production has ceased. Thank you for watching. 15 episodes into a planned 20-episode season. The story would never finish. She felt angry, then guilty about feeling angry. Humanity had been exiled, removed from their homes, and she was upset about a television show. But it was more than that. The show had made her feel things she had never felt before. Human stories had a quality that Valorum stories lacked, a sense of urgency, of emotion, of lives lived intensely because they were finite. Now those stories were gone. The exodus reached its peak in the final week. Ships filled with humans departed from every corner of assembly space, converging toward the outer boundaries. It was the largest coordinated movement in galactic history. 9.2 billion humans, aboard 12,000 vessels, heading toward empty space beyond assembly jurisdiction. Ambassador Webb stood on the command deck of the colony ship Unity, watching the last stragglers join the fleet. Behind them, the lights of assembly space glittered against the darkness. Ahead lay unexplored systems, empty worlds, uncertainty. Captain Rodriguez stood beside him. All vessels report ready, Ambassador. We're the last ones, Webb nodded slowly. Then let's go home. Sir, we don't have a home anymore. Yes, we do, Captain. We're just going to build it ourselves this time. The fleet activated their drives simultaneously, 12,000 ships moving as one, departing assembly space exactly 45 days after the vote. They left behind clean facilities, organized records, comprehensive documentation, and thousands of aliens who were just beginning to realize what they had lost. In the Galactic Assembly Chamber, now empty except for maintenance workers, a cleaning crew found a small plaque that Ambassador Webb had left on the human delegation podium. The inscription was simple. We came in friendship. We leave in peace. May you find what you were looking for in our absence. The worker who found it did not understand the message's weight. He filed it in storage, where it would remain forgotten for exactly 6 months. The first cracks. The first 3 months after humanity's departure passed in a strange calm. The Galactic Assembly congratulated itself. Trade continued, though with some delays. Research progressed, though more slowly. Life went on. Then the problems began. Dr. Kelly stood in the emergency medical bay of Zentari Prime Central Hospital, staring at a patient who was dying in front of him. The diagnostic AI kept displaying the same error message: insufficient data for analysis. He had seen Dr. Okonkwo handle cases like this dozens of times. A quick scan, a confident diagnosis, immediate treatment. She had made it look effortless. Now he realized he had never truly understood the process. Run the scan again, he ordered the medical technician. We've run it 4 times, Doctor. The system keeps failing. Kelly's pulled up the troubleshooting manual that Sarah had left. 3,000 pages of technical documentation. He searched for the error code, found it on page 1247. The solution referenced another procedure on page 2091, which required understanding a concept explained in the appendix, which assumed knowledge from the first 8 chapters that he had never read. The patient died 47 minutes later. The autopsy revealed a blood infection that should have been easily treatable if identified quickly. The diagnostic AI could have identified it in 3 minutes, but the AI required calibration that Kelly's did not know how to perform. It was not the last death. Over the next 2 months, medical outcomes across Zentari Prime declined by 23%. The sophisticated systems that human doctors had built continued to function, but they functioned incorrectly. Calibrations drifted, error rates increased. The Zentari medical staff knew how to use the tools, but not how to maintain them, not how to truly understand them. Dr. Kelly's finally sat down and began reading Sarah's manual from the beginning. Page 1. By page 50, he realized the depth of his ignorance. By page 200, he understood that he was years away from having the knowledge that Sarah had possessed. The manual was excellent, comprehensive, detailed, but it could not replace decades of experience and intuition. On Koratha 4, the mining disaster struck without warning. Shaft 19 in the deep excavation zone collapsed, killing 89 miners instantly. The structural monitors had shown green status right up until the moment of failure. Superintendent Grohl stood at the disaster site, looking at the mountain of rubble where his workers had been. The rescue efforts had recovered 12 survivors and 89 bodies. The structural monitors still showed green, still insisted everything was fine. How did this happen? He demanded of his chief engineer. The engineer, a young Korath named Revek, who had trained briefly under Thomas Kane, pulled up the monitoring data. Sir, the sensors detected microfractures 3 days ago. The system logged them as routine stress patterns. Were they routine? According to the baseline parameters, yes, but Engineer Kane used to manually review all deep shaft readings. He said the baseline parameters were too forgiving, that you needed to look at patterns, not just individual readings. Grohl felt his stone-like skin crack with rage. He never told us that. He did, sir. It's in the training documentation. Section 7, subsection 12. But we were too busy to implement the manual review process. We trusted the automated systems. The investigation revealed that the monitoring AI had been functioning exactly as programmed. The problem was that the programming assumed human oversight, assumed someone with experience would review the data and catch the patterns that indicated danger. The Korath engineers had treated the AI as a complete solution, rather than a tool requiring expert interpretation. Grohl ordered the manual review process implemented across all mining operations. Production dropped by 35% because engineers now spent hours reviewing data. More importantly, they lacked the experience to interpret what they were seeing. They were learning, but slowly, and the tuition was paid in lives. 3 more collapses occurred over the next 2 months, smaller ones with fewer casualties, but each one revealed the same pattern. Sophisticated human-designed systems failing because nobody understood how to use them properly. The transportation crisis developed more gradually, but with wider impact. The orbital traffic control systems began experiencing delays. Ships that once docked in 20 minutes now waited 2 hours. Cargo vessels that once navigated complex routes in days now took weeks. Station Commander Vrel, who had replaced Lisa Park at Station Zenith 7, reviewed the traffic logs with growing frustration. The AI was routing ships inefficiently, sending cargo vessels on circuitous paths, creating bottlenecks at major transfer points. Why is the AI performing so poorly? He asked his traffic control team. His deputy, a Valorum named Shen, pulled up the system diagnostics. The AI is functioning normally, Commander. It's routing ships according to standard protocols. Then why are we seeing these delays? Because standard protocols are inefficient. The human controllers used to override the AI constantly, making adjustments based on factors the AI doesn't consider. Ship captain experience, cargo sensitivity, political tensions, weather patterns in destination systems, dozens of variables. Vrel studied the logs from 6 months ago, when human controllers had managed the station. He saw constant manual interventions, small adjustments that kept traffic flowing smoothly. The humans had used the AI as a foundation, but applied judgment to optimize every decision. Can we program those factors into the AI? We're trying, Commander. But the human controllers worked on instinct. They couldn't always explain why they made certain decisions. They just knew what would work. The delays cascaded through the transportation network. Ships arrived late, disrupting schedules. Cargo deliveries missed their windows. Perishable goods spoiled. The economic impact spread like ripples on water, affecting every industry, every world, every species. The Assembly Trade Commission convened an emergency session. Representative Morvan, a Valorum economist, presented the data. Transportation efficiency is down 41% across all major routes. This is causing delivery delays averaging 12 standard days. The economic cost is estimated at 2.7 trillion credits per month and rising. What's causing the decline? Asked Commissioner Threll. The absence of human traffic controllers and logistics coordinators. They managed the transportation network with a level of sophistication we didn't appreciate. We're using the same systems, but we lack their expertise. Surely we can train new controllers. We are training them, Commissioner. But training takes time. The humans spent years learning their craft. We are trying to compress that into months. A Thraxi representative clicked his mandibles skeptically. You're saying we cannot run our own transportation network? That sounds like incompetence. Morvan's luminescent skin flickered with irritation. I'm saying we relied on human expertise without developing our own. We're not incompetent. We're inexperienced. There's a difference. The military situation deteriorated with terrifying speed. The Kresh swarm, an aggressive hive species from the Galactic Rim, had been contained by assembly forces for 2 decades. They were territorial, expansionist, and highly coordinated. Human tactical advisors had trained assembly forces to counter their swarm tactics effectively. Ship traffic patterns that don't match natural phenomena. The humans were clever. If they wanted to hide, they would hide well. Vex felt her mandibles click with approval. Reconfigure our sensors. Look for anomalies, not obvious signatures. Over the next 3 weeks, they developed new search patterns. They looked for stars that showed unusual activity, for asteroid belts with mining patterns, for planets with slight atmospheric changes that might indicate terraforming. Then Ensign Thaler found something. Captain, this system shows irregular gravitational fluctuations. Could be natural, but the pattern is too regular. Vex studied the data. The system had 3 planets, 2 gas giants and 1 terrestrial world in the habitable zone. The gravitational readings suggested something large in orbit, but their long-range scans showed nothing. It could be a cloaking field, Dr. Shen suggested. The humans were experimenting with stealth technology before the Exile. Take us in slowly. Passive sensors only. I don't want to seem threatening. The Pathfinder approached the system cautiously. As they crossed the outer boundary, their sensors suddenly illuminated with contacts. Orbital stations appeared from nowhere, their cloaking fields dropping. Ships powered up from standby mode surrounding the scout vessel. Captain, we have 18 vessels converging on our position, Corin reported with forced calm. All human design, but more advanced than anything in our database. Before Vex could respond, a communication came through. The voice was human, female, professional, but with an edge of warning. Unknown vessel, you have entered the sovereign space of the New Haven Alliance. State your identity and purpose, or you will be escorted out. Vex activated the communication system. This is Captain Vex of the Galactic Assembly scout ship Pathfinder. I'm here on a diplomatic mission. I request an audience with your leadership. A pause. Then, Captain Vex, the Assembly sent you? That's interesting. Hold position. Someone will meet you shortly. An hour later, a sleek human transport docked with the Pathfinder. A woman in her 60s emerged, wearing a simple blue uniform with no obvious rank insignia. Her hair was silver, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. Captain Vex, I'm Chancellor Diana Reeves. Welcome to New Haven Space. Vex extended her upper claw in greeting. Chancellor, thank you for seeing me. Follow me, please. We have much to discuss. The transport took them to the main planet, which the humans called Haven Prime. As they descended, Vex stared through the viewport in amazement. The planet showed extensive development, cities covering entire continents, orbital infrastructure that dwarfed anything in assembly space, ships moving in complex traffic patterns that made assembly ports look primitive by comparison. You've built all this in 6 months? Vex asked in disbelief. Reeves smiled slightly. We've built all this in 6 months without restrictions, without committees telling us to slow down, without regulations written by species who didn't understand our technology, without constant fear that our innovations might upset someone. We've been very productive. They landed at the capital city, a sprawling metropolis that mixed nature with architecture in ways Vex had never seen. Buildings rose like trees, their structures incorporating living plants. Water flowed through channels that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. The air was clean, the streets organized, the people obviously prosperous. Reeves led Vex to a governmental building that looked more like a park than an office. They sat in an open-air conference room where real trees provided shade and birdsong filled the air. "Why are you here, Captain?" Reeves asked directly. Vex had prepared a speech, but looking at this thriving civilization, the words seemed inadequate. "The Assembly made a mistake. We exiled humanity believing we would be better off without you. We were wrong. Systems are failing across Assembly space. Medical care has declined. Transportation is breaking down. Mining accidents have increased. Our military is losing battles. Research has stalled. Everything is getting worse, and you want us to fix it. We want to apologize. We want to ask you to return." Reeves leaned back in her chair. "Return as what?" "As second-class members who get exiled again the next time we make someone nervous. As the civilization that everyone depends on but nobody trusts. As full members with guaranteed rights. We have guaranteed rights here. We have freedom. We have the ability to innovate without asking permission." She gestured at the city around them. "Do you see what we've built? This is what humanity looks like without chains." Vex felt her mandibles droop. "Your people are suffering. Medical mortality rates are up 19%. Industrial accidents have increased by 1/3. The Kresh swarm is conquering border systems because our military has forgotten how to fight effectively." "Those are not our problems anymore," Reeves said, though her expression softened slightly. "The Assembly made it clear we weren't wanted. You can't exile us and then expect us to save you." "I understand, but Chancellor, innocent people are dying. People who voted against the exile. People who had nothing to do with the decision." Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. It's not their fault. But, Captain, you need to understand something. We're not angry. We're not seeking revenge. We're just done. Done with being taken for granted. Done with being feared and depended on simultaneously. Done with limiting ourselves to make others comfortable. So you'll do nothing? You'll let civilizations collapse?" "I didn't say that." Reeves stood and walked to the edge of the open-air room, looking out over the city. "Come here, look at this." Vex joined her. From their vantage point, she could see across the entire city. Among the humans moving through the streets, she saw other species. Valorum Korath, even a few Thraxi. "You have aliens here?" Vex asked in surprise. "Immigrants. They started arriving 2 months ago. Young people mostly. Tired of assembly bureaucracy. Wanting to build and create without endless restrictions. We've accepted them as citizens. They have the same rights as humans. They contribute to our society and thrive here. The Assembly doesn't know about this. The Assembly doesn't need to know everything about us anymore." Vex watched a group of young Valorum walking with human colleagues, laughing together. "If people are immigrating here, the Assembly is losing its best minds." "Yes," Reeves said simply. "That's your problem to solve, not ours." They returned to their seats. Vex felt desperation growing. "Chancellor, what would it take? What can the Assembly offer that would convince you to help?" Reeves considered the question carefully. "First, understand that we will not return as Assembly members. That door is closed, but we might be willing to help as independent partners." "What does that mean?" "It means we maintain our sovereignty. This sector of space belongs to the New Haven Alliance. We govern ourselves, make our own laws, conduct our own foreign policy. We owe the Assembly nothing and take orders from no one. The Assembly won't like that. The Assembly exiled us. They don't get to dictate terms anymore." Vex clicked her mandibles nervously. "What else?" "Formal recognition of our sovereignty. Not just verbal promises, but legal treaties. The Assembly must acknowledge that exiling us was an error and apologize officially. And they must accept that we will continue doing things our way. Developing AI beyond Assembly limits, pursuing genetic research others find uncomfortable, innovating in ways that might make species nervous. No more restrictions. In exchange for what? We'll provide assistance, medical advisors to help stabilize your healthcare systems, engineering consultants to repair critical infrastructure, military trainers to teach your forces how to fight effectively again, scientists to collaborate on research projects. But we do this as consultants, not employees. We work on our terms, set our own schedules, and maintain complete independence. We share knowledge, but retain ownership of our innovations. And most importantly, we reserve the right to refuse any request that we find unreasonable." Vex absorbed this carefully. "The Assembly will need time to consider these terms." "Of course. But Captain, understand something clearly. We're not desperate. We're thriving here. If the Assembly refuses our terms, we continue building our civilization, and they continue declining. The choice is entirely theirs." May I see more of what you've built? The Assembly will want proof of your capabilities. Reeves smiled. Certainly. I'll arrange a tour. Over the next 3 days, Vex and her crew toured New Haven facilities. What they saw exceeded anything in assembly space. Medical centers where diseases were diagnosed in seconds and cured in hours. Manufacturing plants where human workers collaborated with sophisticated AI to produce goods of extraordinary quality. Research laboratories pushing boundaries in physics, biology, chemistry, and mathematics. Military academies training human forces in tactics that made assembly doctrine look primitive. But what struck Vex most was not the technology. It was the atmosphere. People here seemed energized, purposeful, happy. There was an intensity to human civilization that had been dampened in assembly space. Here, freed from restrictions, that intensity blazed. She met Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, who now directed medical research for all of New Haven. The same woman who had left her laboratory on Zentari Prime now oversaw projects that made her previous work look simple. Doctor, the medical situation on Zentari Prime has deteriorated badly, Vex said. Dr. Kelly sends his regards and asks if you might return to help. Sarah's expression softened with sympathy. I left detailed instructions. Is he having trouble? The diagnostic systems are failing. Medical mortality rates have increased significantly. The systems aren't failing. They're being used incorrectly. Sarah pulled up data on a holographic display. See this? The diagnostic AI requires constant calibration. It's not a magic box that automatically works. It's a sophisticated tool that needs expert guidance. Can you help him? I can send an advisory team. They'll spend a few months on Zentari Prime, training the medical staff properly, fixing the calibration issues, showing them how to maintain the systems independently. But this is consultation work. We are not moving back. The Assembly will be grateful. Sarah's expression turned serious. Captain, make sure the Assembly understands something. We're offering help because people are suffering, not because we forgive the Exile. What they did was wrong. We're willing to move forward, but we won't forget. Vex met similar attitudes everywhere. Human engineers willing to consult on infrastructure projects. Human researchers open to collaboration. Human military advisors prepared to train assembly forces. But all of them maintained the same position. They would help as independent professionals, not as returning citizens. On her final day, Chancellor Reeves took Vex to an observation deck, overlooking a massive construction project in orbit. Hundreds of ships worked on what appeared to be a space station of unprecedented size. What is that? Vex asked. A gateway station. When complete, it will be the largest transportation hub in this sector. We're building it to facilitate trade, not just for ourselves but for any species that wants to use it. We're planning to invite trading partners from across the galaxy, including the Assembly if they wish. You're building all this in 6 months? We're building all this without anyone telling us to slow down, to be more careful, to consider how our progress makes others feel. This is what happens when you remove the restrictions. Vex turned to face her. Chancellor, may I speak honestly? Please. Part of me is relieved. If you had remained in assembly space, growing this powerful, this advanced, you would have dominated everything. You would have overshadowed every other civilization simply by being yourselves. Perhaps the Assembly was right to be frightened of you. Reeves nodded slowly. We wondered about that ourselves. Are we too much? Too fast, too intense, too ambitious? But then we realized something. The problem wasn't that we were too much. The problem was that we were being held back, and everyone else was being held back too. The Assembly doesn't need to fear human advancement. They need to learn from it. Learn what? That innovation isn't dangerous. That change isn't a threat. That different species can have different speeds of development, and that's acceptable. The Assembly tried to make everyone progress at the same rate, the slowest comfortable pace. That's not unity. That's stagnation. Vex clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. So you're saying the Assembly needs to change its entire philosophy? I'm saying the Assembly needs to stop being afraid. Of us, of themselves, of the future. Fear is what caused this whole situation. Will you deliver this message personally? Reeves shook her head. No, I have a civilization to run, but I'll send an ambassador with you, someone who can speak for New Haven, and negotiate the final terms of our partnership. The next day, Vex's ship departed Haven Prime with an additional passenger, Ambassador Marcus Webb, who had accepted the exile so calmly 6 months ago, now returned to present New Haven's terms to the assembly that had exiled him. As the Pathfinder jumped to hyperspace, Webb stood on the observation deck with Vex, watching Haven Prime disappear behind them. "Do you think the assembly will accept our terms?" Webb asked. "They have no choice," Vex replied. "The alternative is continued decline, possibly collapse." "But Ambassador, can I ask you something? When the assembly voted to exile humanity, you accepted so calmly. No protest, no anger. Why?" Webb smiled slightly. "Because I knew something the assembly didn't. I knew what humanity was capable of when we stopped holding ourselves back. The exile wasn't a punishment, Captain. It was liberation. The assembly thought they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they freed us to become what we were always meant to be. And what's that? A civilization without limits. A people who push boundaries not because we're reckless, but because we're curious, because we see what could be and we can't help but try to build it. The assembly feared that quality. Out here, free from their restrictions, that quality is our greatest strength." Vex thought about the cities she had seen, the technology, the energy of human civilization unleashed. "I think the assembly is beginning to understand what they lost." "Good," Webb said quietly. "Then maybe they'll appreciate what we're offering now." The journey back to assembly space took 12 days. Webb spent the time preparing his presentation, reviewing data on the decline of assembly systems, and formulating the partnership terms in precise legal language. He was not returning as a supplicant asking to rejoin. He was returning as the representative of a sovereign power offering assistance to a struggling neighbor. When the Pathfinder finally emerged in assembly space, they found a galaxy still deteriorating. Traffic control delays had worsened. News reports spoke of another mining disaster on Korath 7th. The Kresh swarm had taken 2 more border systems. Medical facilities across multiple worlds were operating in crisis mode. Chancellor Vaughn received them immediately. The assembly chamber was packed with delegates desperate for news. When Webb walked in, wearing the blue uniform of New Haven rather than the formal attire of assembly members, a shocked silence fell over the chamber. Vaughn's voice carried across the quiet space. "Ambassador Webb, you have returned. I have returned, Chancellor, but not as an assembly member. I represent the sovereign New Haven Alliance. We have received your request for assistance through Captain Vex. We are prepared to offer help, subject to certain terms." "Terms?" A Thraxi delegate stood abruptly. "You dare make demands? You should be grateful we're giving you a chance to return." Webb's expression didn't change. "We're not returning. We're offering partnership. If that doesn't interest the assembly, I can leave immediately." "New Haven doesn't need this partnership." "You do." The Thraxi started to respond angrily, but Vaughn raised a hand for silence. "Please continue, Ambassador." "What are your terms?" Webb projected the New Haven proposal on the central display. "First, formal recognition of New Haven sovereignty. This includes territorial rights to our current systems and any uninhabited systems we develop in the future. Second, an official apology from the Assembly acknowledging that the exile was an error. Third, acceptance that New Haven will govern itself according to its own laws, which may differ from Assembly regulations." Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was not what they had hoped for. "In exchange," Webb continued, "New Haven will provide emergency assistance to address your immediate crises, medical teams to stabilize healthcare systems, engineering consultants to repair infrastructure, military advisors to train your forces, research collaborators to advance scientific projects. We will share knowledge and expertise as independent partners." Councillor Brannick stood slowly. "Ambassador, these terms essentially admit we were wrong to exile you." "Yes," Webb said simply, "because you were wrong. And if we refuse, if we demand you return as full members with no special status, then we wish you well and return home. New Haven will thrive regardless, but your medical systems will continue failing. Your infrastructure will keep breaking down. Your military will keep losing battles. The Kresh will keep taking territory. And eventually, other species will start immigrating to New Haven, seeking the freedom and opportunity we offer. Your best minds will leave just as ours did." The threat was implicit but clear. New Haven didn't need the Assembly, but the Assembly desperately needed New Haven. A young Valorum delegate rose, her luminescent skin bright with emotion. "This is blackmail. You're exploiting our crisis to gain political advantage. Webb turned to face her directly. No, blackmail would be threatening to cause harm unless you pay us. We're not threatening anything. We're simply stating reality. You exiled us. We built a new civilization. Now you want our help. We're willing to provide it, but only as equals, not as subordinates. That's not blackmail. That's self-respect. The debate raged for hours. Some delegates argued for accepting New Haven's terms. Others insisted on demanding unconditional return. A few suggested military action to force compliance, though those voices were quickly shouted down by those who realized human military capabilities now likely exceeded the Assembly's. Finally, Chancellor Vaughan called for order. This Assembly must decide. Do we accept partnership with New Haven on their terms, or do we refuse and face our crisis alone? The vote took place the next day. 287 civilizations voted to accept New Haven's terms. 19 voted against, 6 abstained. The formal treaty was signed 1 week later. The Galactic Assembly officially acknowledged that exiling humanity had been an error born of fear and misunderstanding. They recognized New Haven's sovereignty and territorial rights. They accepted that New Haven would develop its own laws and regulations. In return, New Haven committed to providing assistance across multiple fields for an initial period of 5 years, renewable by mutual agreement.